Wait, pause for a second. Can you imagine sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner, the air thick with the smell of roasting turkey and cinnamon, surrounded by your family, the people who supposedly love and support you, only to have your grandfather, a man worth well over $1 billion, lean in and deliver a line that would utterly shatter your entire life plan? Because that's exactly what happened to me last year. I was already dreading the holiday, but nothing could have prepared me for the casual cruelty of his words when he said, "Glad you're enjoying the college fund." It was a punch to the gut, a betrayal so deep it still makes my blood run cold to think about it. The thing is, I wasn't enjoying the college fund. I was working 3 jobs just to keep my head above water, and what he said implied I was somehow wasting money that was rightfully mine, money I hadn't even touched. This story is about a family that runs on wealth, power, and secrets, and how I finally exposed their biggest lie and took back what was mine. But I need to know something first, something that's been eating at me. Was I wrong for completely blowing up my entire family's Thanksgiving and exposing them all in the most public way possible? Seriously, tell me, because I need to know if my need for justice crossed the line into simple revenge. So, let's start at the beginning, because you need to understand the dynamics of the Blackwood family to truly grasp the weight of that statement. My grandfather, Arthur Blackwood, is the definition of a self-made man who became a monster. He started with nothing and built a vast real estate and investment empire, making him a billionaire. But that wealth came with a price: his personality. He was a tyrannical patriarch who ruled his family with an iron fist, controlling every major decision from where his children lived to what careers his grandchildren would pursue. My father, Richard, was his golden child, the obedient heir who was groomed from birth to take over the company. My mother, Sarah, was beautiful and socially ambitious, and she played the part of the perfect, supportive wife, always deferring to Grandpa Arthur. My immediate family unit, Dad, Mom, and my younger sister, Chloe, lived a life of extreme luxury. We had the sprawling estate, the private schools, the annual trips to the south of France, the whole 9 yards. For them, life was a performance of effortless perfection. Then there was me, Alex. I was the black sheep, or maybe just the one who saw the strings attached to all the glittering wealth. I wasn't interested in joining the family business, which instantly made me a target for Grandpa Arthur's passive-aggressive disdain. I wanted to be a journalist, to tell stories and expose truths, and that profession was deemed unworthy and embarrassing by the Blackwoods. I still remember the look of utter disappointment on my father's face when I told him I'd applied to the State University's journalism program instead of the Ivy League business school he'd selected for me. "Alex, a Blackwood doesn't go to the state school. It's an insult to your grandfather," he'd hissed at me. The real control mechanism in the family, the one that kept everyone in line, was the college fund. Grandpa Arthur had set up this legendary, untouchable trust for all his grandchildren's education, something everyone in the extended family knew about. It was meant to cover tuition, books, living expenses, everything, for 4 years, no questions asked, provided you got into a respectable school. My older cousins had all used it, attending Wharton, Stanford, and Harvard. The fund was a symbol of Grandpa's largesse and a guarantee of a privileged future. Because I refused to go into the family business, my father had always threatened me with it, saying things like, "If you choose that ridiculous journalism degree, don't expect a single penny extra from us. You'll rely entirely on the trust, and it won't cover your frivolous hobbies." I didn't care. I got into the state university's program, and I decided to prove I could do it my way. I was accepted, and when I enrolled, I was told the standard procedures were in place for the college fund to cover my tuition and housing. That's where the story of my struggle begins, because from day one, there was a problem. The fund, my college fund, was a ghost. My tuition was never paid. The university finance office kept sending me increasingly panicked emails. I asked my parents about it. "Oh, the paperwork must be slow. You know how lawyers are." "Don't worry, darling, it's just a clerical error," my mother would say, airily dismissing my panic with a wave of her hand. My father would grunt and tell me to stop bothering me with trivial details, I'm closing a major deal. They were always too busy, too detached, too insulated by their own wealth to see the reality of my life. The reality was that by the end of my freshman year, I had a 4-figure tuition balance and a terrifying financial hold on my account. I couldn't register for the next semester. I was forced to take out a high-interest student loan, a fraction of what the fund should have covered, just to register. Over the next 3 years, the lies continued. Every semester, the same cycle. tuition due, the college fund nowhere to be found, and my parents offering vague excuses. I eventually had to take on a full course load and 3 demanding part-time jobs: tutoring, serving at a dive bar late at night, and doing freelance writing to make ends meet. I was living on ramen and exhaustion, watching my friends enjoy the college experience, while I was running on 4 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline. The loan amount grew. The stress was crushing. I was getting great grades, I was succeeding in my program, but I was doing it all without the safety net I was promised, the safety net that every other Blackwood grandchild took for granted. The thing that kept me going was the knowledge that I had to expose this hypocrisy. I realized my parents and grandfather weren't just incompetent, they were actively letting me struggle as a form of punishment for not conforming. It was emotional blackmail wrapped in a gold bow. They figured if I suffered enough, I'd come crawling back, begging to quit journalism and join the company. But they underestimated me. I was determined to finish my degree and become the very thing they despised, an independent truth teller. The final straw came just a few weeks before that fateful Thanksgiving. I needed to sign the paperwork for my graduation, and the financial hold from my student loans was blocking it. I called the trust office directly, bypassing my parents and grandpa's personal secretary, and I finally got to speak to the chief trustee, a stern, older woman named Mrs. Henderson. I explained my situation, the years of non-payment, the mounting debt. Her voice, when she responded, was carefully neutral, but the message was a chilling dagger. Mr. Blackwood, the college fund account for Alexander Blackwood was closed 4 years ago, right before you enrolled in university. Your father personally instructed us to transfer the entire principal, which was $180,000, into a private Blackwood holding company. She added that it was the only college fund account to ever be dissolved early. I went numb. The money wasn't tied up in paperwork. It wasn't a clerical error. It was gone. My own father, with Grandpa Arthur's knowledge, had taken the money specifically allocated for my future and used it for their own purposes, leaving me to drown in debt as a disciplinary measure. I saw red. The shock turned into a cold, terrifying clarity. I wasn't just wronged, I was stolen from. That $180,000 would have covered my entire education and living costs, and instead, I had nothing but a degree and a crippling amount of debt. I finally understood the extent of their cruelty. They had not only taken my money, but they had forced me to suffer for years, all while watching me struggle from the gilded cage of their own making. I spent the next few weeks digging. As a journalist in training, I knew how to find things. I got records, I cross-referenced dates, and I pieced together the trail of that $180,000. It hadn't gone into a generic holding company. It had been used to cover a significant, unexpected expense, a custom-built, luxury horse stable on my father's newly acquired ranch property, a lavish vanity project for my spoiled sister, Chloe, who was training for equestrian events. My college education was sacrificed for a stable for a horse. So that's the situation I was in. I had the truth, the receipts, the evidence of years of deliberate, financial and emotional abuse, and I had to make a choice. I could confront them quietly, demand the money, and let the family sweep it under the rug as they always did, or I could use the opportunity of Thanksgiving, the one time they all gathered to perform their perfect family charade, to finally expose them all and shatter their perfect image. Before I tell you what happened next, and what I did with the proof, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have prioritized the chance for reconciliation, or the chance for justice? The Thanksgiving dinner was held at Grandpa Arthur's estate, a marble and glass mausoleum of wealth. The entire extended family was there, all the obedient cousins, their polished spouses, the aunts and uncles who measured their own success by their proximity to Arthur's fortune. I wore my cheapest, most worn-out clothes, a subtle rebellion against the silk and cashmere surrounding me. I sat at the grand table, a long, polished mahogany coffin that reflected the 100 flickering candles, and I felt like an anthropologist observing a strange, ruthless tribe. The whole dinner was a masterclass in superficiality, forced laughter, business talk, and endless, vapid compliments. Then came the moment. Dessert was being served, a ridiculous, 3-tiered masterpiece of a pumpkin pie, and the after-dinner brandy was flowing. Grandpa Arthur was holding court, droning on about a recent successful acquisition, basking in the predictable praise of his children. My father, Richard, was smiling proudly next to him, the perfect heir. Then, Grandpa Arthur turned to me. He hadn't spoken more than a handful of words to me all evening. He gave me that familiar, patronizing smile, the one that said, "I know you're failing, and it's your own fault." And that's when he delivered the line, loud enough for the entire table to hear, as a casual barb thrown in the direction of the family failure. Glad you're enjoying the college fund, Alex. It certainly made things easy for you to pursue your little hobby. The entire table chuckled politely. My mother gave me a look that said, don't you dare cause a scene. But I was done. 4 years of struggling, of being lied to, of debt and ramen and working until my hands bled, it all rushed to the surface. I smiled back, a slow, terrifyingly calm smile. Funny you should say that, Grandpa, I said, my voice cutting through the polished chatter like a shard of glass. Everyone went silent. All eyes were on me. I took a sip of water, just to prolong the tension. Because I'm not enjoying the college fund at all. In fact, I'm nearly $60,000 in student debt. And no, it's not because I squandered it. My father's face went pale. He immediately tried to intervene. Alex, this is neither the time nor the place for this. You've had too much wine. Actually, Dad, I replied, holding up a hand to stop him, it's the perfect time and place. I'm just correcting Grandpa's generous assumption. The truth is, my college fund was liquidated 4 years ago. The entire $180,000, which was meant to be untouched, was transferred out of the trust by your direct order, Dad, and deposited into a private company account. An action that is, by the way, almost certainly a breach of fiduciary duty by the trustee, who I will be contacting again on Monday. A collective gasp rippled through the table. The cousins looked horrified, the aunts and uncles were glued to the drama. Grandpa Arthur's face was a mask of cold fury, but before he could speak, I pressed my advantage. I wasn't done, and before anyone asks, what happened to the money? I actually did some real digging, something a journalist is trained to do. The paper trail, conveniently, leads directly to the Blackwood Holdings expenditure on the new Chloe Blackwood Equestrian Center, a state-of-the-art horse stable on your ranch, Dad. So, for the record, I said, looking straight at my sister, Chloe, who was starting to tear up in confusion, I'm not enjoying my college fund, Chloe is. My 4 years of education, my late nights, my debt, and my struggle were all sacrificed for a horse stable. Do you find that funny, Grandpa? I looked him dead in the eye. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother finally snapped, lunging at me. Alex, stop this. You're ruining everything. My father, meanwhile, was speechless, his entire body rigid with shock and shame. Grandpa Arthur finally found his voice, a low, menacing growl. You will regret this, Alex. You will not receive another cent from this family, ever. That's funny, Grandpa, I said, pushing my chair back and standing up slowly, my heart pounding with a mix of terror and triumph. Because I already haven't, and I have one more thing to share. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, printed sheet of paper, a copy of the transfer request and the subsequent invoice for the stable's construction. I tossed it onto the table near the pie. This is the proof. And I didn't take an advanced business class to find it. I took a simple investigative journalism class. I am no longer asking for my money back, Dad. I'm telling you I'm going to sue the Blackwood Trust for 4 years of tuition, living expenses, and damages for the emotional duress and financial hardship you deliberately inflicted on me. I'll make sure everyone knows that the great Arthur Blackwood is a thief who stole his grandson's future to buy a barn. I looked at the sea of pale, shocked faces. Every single one of them, the cousins who thought they were safe, the aunts who depended on Arthur's favor, my parents whose public image was their everything, they were all staring at the beautiful, shattering mess I had made of their perfect holiday. I didn't wait for a response. I just walked out the front door, leaving the sound of the ensuing chaos, my father shouting, my mother sobbing, and the low, furious voice of Grandpa Arthur, fading behind me. The aftermath was swift and brutal. My father, scrambling to contain the damage to his public image, tried to call me a liar, but the paper I'd thrown on the table was authentic and immediately circulated among the extended family, planting seeds of doubt and fear. The trustee, Mrs. Henderson, terrified of a lawsuit that would expose the trust's questionable practices, anonymously confirmed my story. The internal pressure on my father became immense. Within a week, I had a call from a lawyer, not my father's, but the one representing the Blackwood Trust itself. They offered a settlement, $250,000, which covered the original $180,000, my student loans, and a small amount for damages provided I signed an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. I refused. I told their lawyer that I wanted the original college fund account to be reopened, with the principal restored and compounded interest for the 4 years, and I wanted my father to admit that he had dissolved it and pay a public fine to the university's student aid program. I knew my real leverage wasn't the money, it was the threat of public scandal and the crack I had placed in the Blackwood family's image of untouchable generosity. A month later, on Christmas Eve, I received a final, official letter. They agreed to my terms, except for the public fine. The college fund was reopened, fully restored, with a letter from the trust admitting a severe, unauthorized mismanagement of the account, and directly citing my father's instructions. The final payout was closer to $310,000, which completely eliminated my debt and left me with a substantial savings account to finally live comfortably and pursue my career without their suffocating control. I haven't spoken to my parents or my grandfather since I walked out that door, and I don't plan to. I finished my degree, graduated with honors, and I'm now working at a great news agency, doing the work I love. The wealth is still there, but the power they held over me is gone. The biggest lesson I learned is that the strings attached to old money are often made of lies and manipulation. Sometimes, the only way to cut those strings is to take a deep breath and start swinging.